Hi, my name is Dan Lasota. I work at UAF eLearning, and I'm joined today by Sean Holland and Heidi Olson. Today this is a third or fourth in a series about what does the research say? And today we're going to concentrate on what makes effective video. I just have to pause the live YouTube stream. It's kind of echoing in my ear.
Yeah.
So just as an introduction, 10 designers working at UAF eLearning, we often talk about particular challenges in particular classrooms, or in general, a lot of instructors are asking us something about a topic. And the topic came up, as we invest time and resources into our own media studio here at UAF, and trying to increase instructor presence and direct instruction through video is always something we're after. The question came about, how do we do this better? What are the best practices involved? And I think one of our colleagues, Owen Guthrie, first brought up an article, and Sean kind of in parallel came across the same article. And it has some best practices. And rather than just talk over what Sean found out, why don't I just turn it over to Sean? And Sean, maybe you can just cover some basics and tell us what you found out there.
Sure. So in writing the page for our faculty resource guide, I Teach You, the page on video, just to back up some of the best practices in creating instructional video, I did a bit of research, and there's an article by Choi and Johnson in 2005 titled "The Effect of Context-Based Video Instruction on Learning and Motivation in Online Courses." And the condensed takeaway from that is that video materials are easier for students to attend to than text-based materials, and that the students felt more motivated by them. The scope of this article is really pretty narrow. It doesn't give any recommendations on how to create videos or what makes a good video, but it's a good starting point for thinking about why you might first use video instead of another medium, such as a text-based announcement or something like that. And that's really what started it. The other things we have to talk about today get a little deeper into video length, production value, and some of those other things.
Right, and just as you mentioned Choi and Johnson, 2005, I was thinking about someone trying to follow along on YouTube. We have curated this list and put it on, if you go to pr.alaska.edu, you'll see all of the articles that we're talking about. And we'll mention that a few more times, but don't feel like you're going to miss out, because you can find the same articles we read, and maybe you'll come to different conclusions or not. Heidi, do you have any thoughts on that Choi article?
Yeah, so I agree, Sean, that it had a pretty narrow focus, and it also, the study group was very small, and it was also made up of graduate students who were planning on, they were taking the class so that they could become better teachers. So I think that the motivation was definitely a little biased, because they're going to be more motivated. Yeah, so I just
and no, I agree, and I think that's some of the weaknesses. That weakness is prevalent in this kind of research, because it's easy to do research when if you're an educational professor, who are your subjects going to be? They're going to be students who are practicing to be teachers. So that's actually a good segue into some of the bulk of the research that we came across from that point, which greatly focused on video viewing and interaction with video in MOOCs, or massive open online courses. Right, Dan?
Yeah. Right. Do you have anything? Did you have any takeaway notes from that particular article?
From which one?
The one on MOOC content?
Well, there were several, actually. The specific one is Guo, Kim, and Rubin 2014. It's how video production affects student engagement on an empirical study of MOOC videos. And this is apparently, this article was cited in several others that we came across in our research. And it's kind of, it appears that this article is the genesis of what some call the 6-minute rule. And they found that on average, over thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands, I think, of views on videos in a massive open online course, the average drop-off point was about 6 minutes in videos deployed in these courses. So their recommendation is to look at to kind of use that number as a ballpark rule when you think about creating a video, to not necessarily you have to make your videos less than 6 minutes, but to expect and not be surprised when you wonder why students aren't doing any better because they're you have all these great 30-minute long videos on YouTube. Maybe it's because there's an engagement threshold that most students are going to fall off at. And that was cited in at least one of the other articles in our reference list, including one of which, it's good to point this out, the article is called The Myth of the 6-Minute Rule. And they make a good point. This is Lagerstrom, Johannes, and Ponsuk Charoen. I think they're German researchers. And they make a good point that we regularly sit through 18-minute long TED Talks, 2-hour-long movies. There's many types of modes of media content online and in other forms that keep our attention for longer than 6 minutes. So if your video is very boring, the drop-off might be 30 seconds because someone can perceive that very quickly. But that number, 6 minutes, is something to anticipate if you are ever going to look more into this research, I think.
And I just want to mention in general, here we are talking about educational research, and it's not chemistry research. There's a lot of variables involved. And if you can imagine, they're taught by 2 professors. One is just more inherently engaging. There might be elements that we can tease out of why one lecture style is more engaging than others. And one of the articles kind of points to this, and you can see some of those effects on YouTube and so forth. Mm-hmm. But you got to take with a kind of a grain of salt, or put it in context of where these engagement levels were measured. So this was a MOOC with many students, and they're trying to gather a particular in 6 minutes get a concept.
Yeah, and I should probably point out, because this article it's really quite good. I mean, if you accept that maybe a MOOC can apply, the findings from a MOOC can apply to a course that only has 20 or 30 students, and I think they can. It's just that that this data is probably the data is robust, and so the findings may be more conclusive than a class like Heidi mentioned of 15 graduate students who are already studying this kind of thing. They had a couple other findings that we should probably mention, and these are pretty much in line with what we tend to recommend to instructors when they come to us for help in producing video. One is, it's better to have an instructor's talking head. I mean, talking head video is sometimes used as a criticism sometimes, but having a person, having your face as part of the media stream is important. And one of the articles, I think the article that talked about the 6-minute rule is a myth. If you go into that PDF, there's actually a kind of a diagram, an array of the different kinds of online videos, from whiteboard video to pencast to talking head to camera on a lecture hall to the video of an instructor in like the bottom left-hand corner, green screen video. But the general point was that putting a face to the voice improves engagement. It's more engaging than just like a PowerPoint slide with a voice. It's can be improved by adding a video. Personal feel.
Let me just stop you there. A lot of the data came from metrics on looking at videos, looking at where people stop watching, where they jump to, how many times they rewatch a segment. So a lot of the data that was, precipitated out of all these studies. That's where they got the information. And we've got a question from Owen Guthrie from the YouTube side here, and he says, do we have our own metrics for students watching our instructor videos?
That's a good question. So actually several of these, yeah, I'll address that. Several of these articles actually specifically mention that Kaltura was the video deployment medium that they were using to serve these videos, and that's actually what we use. We can use here at UAF. Kaltura MediaSpace is a video publishing platform that allows you to look at analytics on your videos. And actually, if you go to the iTeachU site, there's a teaching tip that I wrote that talks about what you can get from that. If you're used to like really granular analytics, like Wistia and some other platforms show you whole heat maps, and there's an article, it's not cited here, but it actually shows, you know, where are click streams happening in the video, and you can see where there's a spike in the video stream, and those are probably areas where students are pausing and rewinding and rewatching or stopping the video, and those are typically viewed to be areas that students are having a problem with or need to rewatch. Unfortunately, we don't have quite that capability with MediaSpace. I think YouTube can do it in kind of a dumb fashion. But what you can do is see, and this is the most powerful thing if you have a class of 30 or 40 students, is you can see which students are watching which video and how much of each video each student is watching. So Kaltura will give you, let's say it's a 10-minute long video, Kaltura will do some simple math and just divide the average view time by the length of the video and give you a percentage. So if students on average watch 5 minutes of the video and it's 10 minutes long, you have an engagement of 50%. Now, if one student watches that video 10 times, you could have an engagement much higher on average. And certain students could have engagement over 100%, depending on if they're watching a video multiple times. And you can, if you deploy your video from Kaltura in a certain way, you can get that data and look and say, okay, Dan, something's going on with Dan. He's watched this video 7 times all the way through, but he got a failing grade on the midterm. What's going on here? So it allows you to have another point for kind of correlating assessments or correlating your observation of student behavior to. It's not rich data, but it's there. It's a data point that you could use to kind of inform your teaching and reevaluate the content that you're putting into a course. So good question, on.
While you were talking there, Sean, I kind of was thinking about, you know, a lot of these articles have presented us with things like a talking head is better than just a slide, or the intonation and rapidity of the speech has an effect on engagement. And so we've got some kind of like general behaviors that are suggested that you perform or exhibit while you're making videos and so forth. But why is that? And I wanted to ask both of you, and maybe we'll start with Heidi, since you have some recent student experience, Heidi. Maybe think back to some of your own classes or work you've done with instructors. Why do you think that it's more engaging to follow the person, you know, the person leading your course, your instructor? Why is that? Why not just show the content from a slide or a textbook?
Yeah, you know, you're trying to create that relationship with your instructor and with your cohort. So being able to see that visual will help. And, you know, for me, personally, once I know that person is, I recognize that person's voice, I'm not sure that I would benefit that much from seeing their picture. So I might not actually agree with that.
Or you might have the video in another tab.
Yeah, you know, if it's a single video, then yes, I do agree that, you know, you need that personal recognition. But if it's a series of videos throughout a course where I recognize that instructor's voice, I'm not sure, and it's not necessarily I don't know.
It's a very personal question, and of course, you're tackling it from your recent grad school experience. But
Mhm.
you know, I think when all of us were, you know, taking freshman level, larger scale classes, the technology playfield was a bit different. So it might be hard for us to remember back to that point. But
Yeah, especially for me.
well, do you have
Um,
any comments on that, Sean, or
Yeah, I was just looking, kind of reviewing the Guo and Kim article from 2014, and they were uh, comparing, say, a talking head video with a Khan Academy style pencast video and looking at the engagement. But I think they were just comparing one to the other. They weren't looking at large numbers of videos. So there's some variables that aren't controlled for there. Maybe the students watching the Khan. So the part of it showed that, and this is the part that they concluded production values, because if you look at a Khan Academy style video, it's really not. It's pretty simple, and there's no talking head, which they didn't actually account for. That students engage with that more consistently throughout. You know, there was a drop off as the video played, but it was not as consistent or precipitous as the talking head video, which had been edited. So they had a video editor take the content of an instructor and edit it with the instructor's face, like a professional editor did this, but without any kind of consistent reasoning. They just were doing it from their experience as an editor. But the Khan Academy video still had a consistent engagement.
yeah, which leads to, it's not necessarily maybe how it was produced, but the content that was being delivered. Because a Khan Academy style video is going to be more like a tutorial where you're trying to learn something specific,
Mm-hmm.
whereas an instructor is more lecture where you're listening to for ideas.
That's a
and
good
that brings us to like,
Yeah.
what is the motivation of a student to watch a video? Is it task oriented? They want to watch a particular task, want to get to it right away, or is it the
Yeah.
instructor taking students on a museum tour of the course or the unit that they're going to cover that
Mhm.
week?
So I should actually use this should I should mention that article 2010 by Bowles, Hensley, and Hinchcliffe, and they were looking specifically at video tutorials in academic libraries. And this is the article that found that even 3 minutes was too long for videos. And I've mentioned that to instructors sometimes. You know, well, sometimes, you know, some researchers found that even 3 minutes is too long, and that's kind of a, you know, kind of a scary thing to think about. I mean, we've been talking here for 18 minutes. Is anyone still watching? I don't know. But to force someone to keep it to 3 minutes for all ranges of content is maybe an unfair thing for us to recommend. So understanding that their context was like, how do I log into Interlibrary Loan? How do I access the journals page on the library website? Well, you shouldn't need more than 3 minutes to explain that. So what students were wanting from those was they needed a specific thing, or they were being asked to watch it for a specific purpose, some assessment. And if you're taking more than 3 minutes to tell me, you know, how to go to the library website, or how to read, look up ISBN codes or something, I'm going to check out. So their recommendation was, you know, 3 minutes is kind of a ceiling, but also to chunk those into 1 minute long videos and kind of list them in a table of content style list. So that's something that maybe if you are creating videos like that match that in content, it's a rule to follow. But it's certainly not something that. So I think there's definitely considerations based on what you are trying to do with the video that come into play and should be considered no matter what.
Right, and they also talked about the inverted pyramid, where it's just like when you're writing a news article, you throw out the most important piece first.
Yes.
And then you follow that up with less important things.
Right.
And that's, you know, hopefully by throwing out that important material first, you're hooking students, and maybe they will read farther rather than preloading with a lot of introductory and why information before, you know, giving the real
Yeah.
purpose of the video.
That's a really good point. Get to the point.
Like I didn't.
No, you did.
I wanted to see if either of you found some references or any parts of the articles that talked about two kinds of conversations. One is like face-to-face conversation where, you know, people, I can look at your facial expressions, I can see if you're checking out, I can have a pretty good grasp on your engagement. And then video conversations where it's definitely asynchronous, but people, especially on YouTube, it's sort of like the YouTube jabber effect. They're so highly animated, and it's like they went to intonation school. That kind of conversation is almost aggravating. But what does the research say about it?
So I believe that the article by, maybe it was the same article, Guo and Kim and Rubin, I think looked at, they found that instructors who spoke faster had greater engagement, I think. Does that sound right, Heidi?
That was from the Guo.
Yes, so videos where instructors speak fairly fast and with high enthusiasm are more engaging. So the recommendation is to coach instructors to realize that maybe in a classroom, you need to speak more slowly because students, that's their one chance to be, and maybe they're taking notes. You might pause for them their heads to come back up and be in attention. But if you're giving them the video, you know, you get a video that they can pause, rewind, watch at double speed or half speed, with you know, voices remaining normal pitch, it makes sense for them to maybe have a more enthusiastic and fast-paced speaking style.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think the library article, the Boyles, Terry, and Hensley best practices for academic libraries also talked about English as a second language. They did have some students that were accessing the library materials as, you know, first-time students. They did make the comment about a pitch and a speed, but that students could slow that down if they needed.
Right.
That.
Right.
Another pacing element, and Owen has another question here from the YouTube side. He said, I heard once that the average time between cuts in a film is 3 seconds, and the average time between cuts in TV commercials is 1.5 seconds. Should we try to use more dynamic multicam shoots when making instructional videos? So that Owen has a lot of questions there, but I'll just.
That's a good point. I mentioned earlier that you know, people maintain their attention spans for a 2-hour movie. Well, it's not a one-shot 2-hour movie, right? Unless it's some art film or something. There's, you know, a 2-hour movie has really high production values, and it has consistent, deliberate cuts to maintain viewer attention. Yes, if an instructor is really careful about what they're producing, having 2 cameras on them that are edited together later, or a live switch production. I should also mention that if you use what is it called? Media capture, Kaltura Media. I should know this. Anyway, Kaltura allows you to record your screen and your video as simultaneous streams that students can actually manipulate. So it is called,
Sean, let me just jump in. There's a really good comment from Kate Sunwood, and she mentioned that multicam shoots are a cool idea, but that would put it out of easy control of the access for individual instructors, though. So we are talking about something that, you know, we can easily do in the studio here, with a camera
Yeah.
control person. But that brings
So
it out of the
I'm
realm
actually
of someone, say, recording from their kitchen.
Yeah, no. So and that gets back to the point of keeping it simple. And in fact, one of the articles actually recommends kind of a do-it-yourself setup, and that producing things kind of consistently and getting your own as an instructor, getting comfortable with kind of maintaining a rhythm in producing videos that are concise is more important than production values. Dr. Bolt Ito's online lab course is a great example of that. He had 4 to 6, maybe sometimes 7 or 8 videos every week in his semester-long course, and each one was maybe from 2 to 8 minutes long, and they were really appropriate in length. Now, if you wanted to come into our studio and use the 3-camera setup, we could do that for him. But let me finish my thought there about Kaltura. It's called Capture Space. So if you log into media.uaf.edu, or if you're at another institution using Kaltura, you can use Capture Space. It's a download for Mac or PC, and it's actually it's basically a screencasting tool, but it gives you and the viewer some control over what they're watching. So if you are watching an instructor's PowerPoint presentation, I can choose to front either the PowerPoint presentation or the instructor video as the main video on screen, and the other one sort of zooms down to the bottom corner as a picture-in-picture style. I can also choose to have them both on screen, kind of a left and right view of the same size. So it doesn't add any burden on the instructor for producing something. No editor has to choose when to cut between the two. It actually kind of lets the viewer edit, so to speak, on the fly while they're watching it, or watch it again with the PowerPoint fronted and visible on the screen. So we need to be using that more, I think. I wanted to plug that for anyone who's interested in that kind of a production. So
that's great. I think that would be really helpful. And once again, makes that activity less passive because the viewer is in control of some of the aspects of that.
Right.
I was thinking about the multi-camera option, and I think one thing that could be maybe even more effective for engagement is the idea of embedding questions and making the video actually interactive.
Yeah.
And that is something that a single instructor could do on their own. Just like any sort of medium, it's only as effective as you make it. So being able to design that learning activities around that video to keep a student engaged and watching, I think that, that is just a really important concept to think about.
Yeah. And YouTube allows that. They call it polling. Kaltura allows that. You can create any video in your MediaSpace account. You can turn into a video quiz. It's pretty simple. They're pretty simple quizzes. You're limited to a few multiple choice answers, but you can create them and sort of intersperse them through the video to make sure students are paying attention or have something to give back.
Yeah, I think even something as as simple as saying, okay, this is my question. I've just talked about this. Here's some reflection questions. Stop the video, get out your paper and pencil, and write down some thoughts about this, and then let's come back and we'll continue our conversation.
That's a good point. Any kind of chunking of videos. So let's say you make a 20-minute recording and you realize later you want to cut that up and make 3 videos out of it. That requires you to have an application like ScreenFlow or something like that, or use the YouTube editor. There are easy and free ways to do it, but it requires more time.
Right.
Whereas if you wanted to kind of get around that in a quick fix, you could maybe add, you can actually split that up in MediaSpace as well. You can upload it to that and then segment out clips. But you could also use video quizzing function as a way of like adding a pause point in a video. It may not actually be a question, but you could have the question say, how do you like the video so far? Take 5 minutes and write down your thoughts. And then they could click yes or no, just to proceed on with the video.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Let me throw some more YouTube questions for you. Kate wants to know, Kate Sunwood wants to know, is the capture space easy for students to use and understand the possibilities? So maybe you could also talk about where the Kaltura resource we have kind of fits into the typical class shell. Maybe start with Heidi while she's drinking coffee.
Yeah, while I'm drinking. I haven't looked at capture space, so I'm sorry, I don't know.
Okay.
I think you'd have to choose it. I mean, it's one of those things no one's going to be forced to use. But I could see it. It's pretty straightforward, and it's free. So if you were to implement it in your course, you don't have to ask students to deal with either pay for anything or deal with like signing up for some free thing that's going to display ads at them. It's something that they can access, and it's also a good way to get them to log into Kaltura Media Space in general, if you want them to be logged in to view your videos. As for the integration, you can actually do a lot of this from inside of Blackboard. I think you have to access capture space from the media.uaf.edu site, but you can deploy videos into your course, and so can students.
Okay.
I see a teaching tip in the future.
I have a list of half-page long of future Kaltura teaching tips.
Well, Owen has he gave us a quick tip. I'm not sure it's enough to flesh out an entire teaching tip, but we appreciate Owen's quest for simplification all the time, and he says the simple option is always just very short videos with questions between in Blackboard. It's a lower tech version. Do either of you want to speak to that, or have you had experience building classes like that? Heidi, maybe?
Sure. Yeah, it's really, if you have your short video and then just follow it up with a Blackboard quiz, which has a variety of question types, and you could set them up for multiple attempts. So if a student needs to try a couple times, they could do that. A little bit awkward because you are kind of moving from one thing to the other with a couple of clicks. So definitely the Kaltura on-screen quiz would be less clicks for a student, but certainly you could incorporate that into a Blackboard course or whatever platform you're using.
Mm-hmm. Kate has a follow-up to the question I might have misinterpreted. She restates, her question is about whether students will realize and understand that they have the ability to click on the talking head or the screen capture and capture space.
Good question.
Well, let's just say they don't. Let's assume they don't. How would you tell students about that?
Well, if you're planning on using that frequently in the course, you would probably want to give a students kind of a primer on that to begin with. And what I would do is create your own video and basically use that video as a way for them to get used to that the switching functionality in that video.
Would your
stream.
video be 6 minutes or less, or how much branding?
You can do that in video? A minute or less. Yeah, we can brand it for you and add music as well.
A nice like 20-second long intro with like a sliding logo and some stars across the screen.
It might even be just an animated GIF, huh?
Could be. But yeah, I would. Actually, I'm really glad Kate is asking about that, and I'm glad we brought it up because it's something I need to learn more about and explore and actually produce some stuff with. And creating an example of that would be even for us that maybe an instructor could then use in their course, because it would be very simple to do. It's actually quite fun watching a video that uses that, because it's just kind of fun clicking back and forth and having the videos sort of switch in and out, and it's quite smooth, and it even works on mobile devices. It's an HTML5 thing, I think. It's something we need to explore more. Okay. I think it does kind of check the boxes on this research that we've come across.
All right. Well, we'll see if there's any more questions coming from the YouTube side. I wonder, were there any other articles or points or findings that you guys want to bring out or highlight?
One
Yeah.
thing that we were kind of talking about before we went live, Dan, was the idea of that front loading all of the logo and the introduction and how that affects the viewer. And we kind of talked about that throughout this time with, you know, getting to the first important thing first. But I know it's not necessarily in the research that we have on this, what we reviewed for this, but I have read other things about how you need to limit that because that, you know, all that front end loading things will quickly lose interest from students.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you know, a lot of times when you start out something, you start out with introductions, you talk about yourself. Well, perhaps you should start out with whatever is important and then come back to who you are and why you should, you know, you have some expertise in talking about the topic.
Right. And really, like, if you think about, if you're creating a video on the week topic, it's going to be nested in your course. Students already know that's the course. They know who you are. They even know the topic for the week. So you don't need to start the video by saying, "Hi class, this is Sean Holland, and this week I'm going to be talking to you about such and such and such and such," because they're already there. So when we've created videos for example, Diane O'Brien and Kristen O'Brien, their biology learning glass videos, we did a little quick introduction that had, you know, UAF e-learning, the title of the video, and then they just started talking. It's like, today we're talking about photosynthesis. Here we go. And they never had to mention their name. We had their name come in a little title. So we were only asking students to sit through about 5 or 6 seconds, and it was consistent. Every single video had the exact same pre-roll, the exact same music. And I actually spoke to one of the students in that class, and he said he really appreciated the consistency because he kind of knew what was going to happen. Like, he could press the play on the video and know that he can, you know, finish drying a dish in his kitchen and then walk to the smart TV and finish watching, you know, engage with where he knew the video was going to start. So that is an important consideration if you're looking at the kind of the fine tuning aspects of what you can do. So,
if there's another comment from Owen, he said there's a reason why many adventure films start with a teaser. Maybe we could make some course of module teasers. I'm thinking of beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark or Bond films. They always begin with the end of some other thrilling adventure.
Absolutely. Every module, you know, you should start out with that hook, whether it's a video, an audio, a cartoon, a text. I mean, that's where you're setting up, you know, some big ideas about the module, and so absolutely.
I thought that all action movies started with a helicopter telephoto shot over water panning up onto the morning over New York City. That's how I thought.
I do want to mention, you know, I'm just kind of sitting back and listening to the conversation. We're covering several topics at once. So, you know, we had touched upon the tutorial video, task-oriented. Why would someone be watching it? For a very specific purpose. So in a video like that, you don't need any external framing. They're there for a reason that you know about. You just get to the point right away. But if you're introducing a module and it's, you know, the first time after spring break or a weekend, or you want to put some distance between another topic, then you might start out with the story and, you know, maybe, oh, and this would be a good point to make an adventure out of the module or talk about it in a historical context. So yeah, we're talking about several things here. I just want to be clear that the context is key. You want to think about what is the purpose of the video. Is it to engage them for the whole unit or just teach a specific competency?
Right.
You know, it's kind of funny that we're doing this talk on video assessment and we haven't actually incorporated any kind of video.
No.
Well, we don't have any examples. This is all research looking at like the analytics based from viewership data, you know.
Right.
And actually, as we've been talking here, I've thought a half a dozen times about, oh, this is a good example of this. And you know, maybe we could include them in the page, although that would get long, and we have maybe that could be another session. Is excellent examples. And if you go to iteachu.uaf.edu/video, there are actually 2 playlists there, one showing a curated playlist of quality instructor introduction videos, and then a playlist of quality content videos and there's about 10 videos in each playlist from YouTube, some UAF instructors, some instructors from other institutions, and you could just kind of sit back, watch those, and get an idea of what we think are good examples of those types of videos. So
yeah, good point.
Well, let's I think we covered quite a lot here. What I would urge people to do is go ahead and take a look at that the page, pr.alaska.edu. I'll make sure I put that link up in the
it should be there in the YouTube, I think, Dan.
It's not, but maybe Heidi or
Heidi's
whoever's
sharing
been
the
helping
screen.
me there, you can type that in. There we have the full references. Sean put some helpful notes about what he thought the takeaway was there. And, we kind of advocate a lot of the classes we do are asynchronous, so the conversation doesn't have to end here. If you'd like to talk more about this, get a hold of us at UAF eLearning, and I don't think we have it scheduled, but we are going to continue this series through the summer, and we'll put that out through our marketing materials. So I'd like to thank Sean and Heidi and the folks for participating on the YouTube side.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks Dan.
Yeah,
Thanks Sean.
Bye, guys.
Yep, talk to you guys later. Bye.